Hey everyone, my name is Chloe, and today is a very exciting day because today we get to see the romance collab of our favorite romances for the month of May. So if you have not seen one of these videos, I will link the playlist down below. I think for all of 2020, myself and some other romance booktubers have all gotten together every single month, and it rotates channels, and we tell about our favorite romance that we read in that given month. It may have been published a long time ago or recently, or it may be an arc, but we talk about our favorite romances of the month. So today we get to hear everybody's favorites for May, and I am so excited. I read 3 exceptionally good ones, and I just cannot pick. And so let's go ahead and roll their clips, and then I will come back at the end and tell you what I decided for my favorite.
Hey friends, I'm Bree, and I make videos over on the channel Bri Hill. And my favorite May romance was Almost Just Friends by Jill Shalvis. So this is book 4 in her Wildstone series. It's the first book in the series that I've read, and I absolutely feel like it can be read as a standalone, and I loved it so much. So this is the romance between Piper and Camden. And we've talked a lot about the blurred lines that we're starting to see in some romances that are like blurring the lines between women's fiction and romance. And I feel like some kind of way Jill Shalvis magically created the perfect balance of both. At the very beginning of this book, Piper turns 30, and she's really kind of giving herself a hard time. She's writing in her bullet journal, because she's a bullet journaler, about how she's turned 30 and she does not have her life figured out like she assumes that you should at the age of 30. Then her sister and her brother both come home. They're both harboring these secrets, and she meets this guy Camden, who is the son of the neighbor of hers that she has been taking care of because he has like diabetes. This is all happening right in the midst of her wanting to sell the lake house that her and her brother and sister have inherited from their grandparents, split the money, and her use her share to go to school to become a physician's assistant. So it's like her being on that cuff of like changing her life, and then her sister and brother come home, both harboring their own secrets, and she's like discovering this new love. And I just loved it so much. She has always been the responsible sibling. She is the oldest. These 3 did lose their parents, so she had to grow up. She had to grow up at a time when she wasn't really done being taken care of, and she had to like grow up and learn how to take care of both her and her siblings. And so now she's getting that chance to like go and live her own life, and then they come back with things that they need to discuss with her, but they're weary because it's like she's already given up so much of her life. And in the midst of that, she meets Camden, and he's just such a good guy. Like, I loved him. He really helped her get out of her shell, and he really helped her understand that you don't have to be the responsible and tough and smart one anymore. Like, everyone is an adult here now, and they don't need you to be in that role. And it's really a story about her having to discover and understand, like, what do I do now that I don't have to fulfill those roles? And really, once those walls of responsibility start to crumble and come down, she's able to also let love in and really appreciate this wonderful man that she has there. And it's so good. Like, I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books of the year. Like, I will recommend this at any time. Like, it's so good, you guys. Definitely my favorite read of the month.
Hello, friends and enemies. I'm Isabel from Happy For Now with my May favorite. This book almost had a little competition. But I got lucky, and I checked with Bree from Bri Hill's channel before I picked it to make sure we didn't double up. But that book is The Virgin and the Rogue by Sophie Jordan. This is her newest release in the Rogue Files series. It's book 6. You can dive in with this one. I promise you're not really missing out on much. If you want to read the one before it, you definitely could and would get a little bit of backstory for our main character. But first of all, we need to appreciate this cover. Hello. It is amazing. I don't think it has a step back, which is, as always, disappointing. But what we have here is a classic historical that really delivers on all the things I love in a book. So first of all, we've kind of got a little bit of forced proximity. He is staying at the house with her and her sister's husband. It's her sister's husband's like step-brother of sorts, half brother. And Charlotte is the buttoned up and tidy girl who is going to marry this village guy she's known forever. They've been friends since they were kids. The marriage got called off. It got called back on again because sometimes things happened for her sister. And then Kingston shows up, and the highlight of this book is the fact that Charlotte's sister loves science and is kind of a medicine woman of the time. She is practicing various remedies, and she makes up a new remedy for Charlotte's cramps. I love the representation in this book around periods. I don't think we talk about it enough. I think this book does a great job talking about the immense amount of pain many women go through before their periods. So that alone is delightful. But anyways, her sister messes with the formula and Charlotte becomes convinced it's an aphrodisiac. It drives her quite wild, and she and Kingston have a little tryst in the library. This is in the very beginning, so no spoilers. And then we go from there, and it's her having to figure out if she's truly attracted to Kingston or if it's all this potion she was given. It's so good. It's so good. And Kingston goes through a lot of growth as a former rake, of course, or a rogue, you know, because he's not technically of high class. And it just was such a good book. It has the drama you want right now and the perfect distractions. I cannot recommend The Virgin and the Rogue enough.
Well, my name's Avery from the channel Avery Loves Books, where I talk about romance books and YA books. And my favorite romance that I read in the month of May was My Favorite Souvenir by Vicky Lind and Penelope Ward. I read this book for Shelby and Kendra's Book Talks After Dark book club that I absolutely love. This month's host with them was Cassidy from Cassidy Reads. I love all these ladies so much, so I had to read this book with them. I've never read a Vicky Lind and Penelope Ward book, so I didn't know what to expect going into it, but I absolutely adored and loved this one. So this romance book is about Hazel and Mateo. Hazel was recently dumped by her fiance. He called off their wedding, and so she already paid for the honeymoon, and so she decided to go on this luxury resort honeymoon by herself. But when she gets there, there is no availability at the hotel because there is a blizzard coming in, and so she sees our main character man Mateo at the front desk to this hotel pretending to be a guest that hasn't showed up yet, and so Hazel pretends to be his sister so that she can actually sleep in a room and not in the hotel lobby while she waits for her flight. They end up actually going on a road trip also through all of this. This is an amazing road trip book. I normally don't like road trip romances, so it was so much fun to read. You would think from the cover that this is like a summer romance. It's not. It's a winter romance. There are blizzards, there's snow. Throughout all of their interactions, they don't know their actual names, so they're keeping their identities a secret, but they're falling for each other through all of it. I really enjoyed reading this one, and it's on Audible Escape if you also want to check it out. So I highly recommend My Favorite Souvenir, and I can't wait to read more of Vicky Lind and Penelope.
Everyone, it's Nicole from Who Picked This Book, and my favorite romance read in the month of May was A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Milla Vane. This is a fantasy romance with a hate-to-love trope. In this book, we follow Maddox, who is trying to kill a corrupt king because he is responsible for the murder of his parents. But when the council forbids him to seek revenge, he has to come up with another way to get his vengeance. And that comes in the form of the corrupt king's daughter, Yvine. She is on her way to an arranged marriage when Maddox and his group of soldiers, who are called the Dragon, ambush the carriage. He quickly finds out that there is much more to Yvine than meets the eye. She wants her father dead as much as Maddox does. You learn that she was abused as a child and she wants her own vengeance, and she proposes that instead of Maddox killing her, that they create an alliance through marriage. There's a lot of action and adventure in this book, and a lot of life or death situations, and through all that time, Maddox and Yvine, of course, start to fall for each other. Maddox saying that he could never love Yvine because she is just a vessel for his vengeance, and Yvine slowly falling for Maddox even though she knows it'll just end in heartbreak. I really enjoyed the world building and the character building and the mythology in this book. If you love an epic fantasy and love an HEA, this book has it all for you. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
My name is Bree, and my channel is In Love and Words, and my favorite read for the month of May is the Edge series by C.D. Reese. To be fair, I've only read the first 3 books in this series, including the sequel, and I haven't gotten to the rest of the books, but I already know it's going to be a favorite. It's a military romance about a surgical resident who is working on the military base, and then a psychiatrist, and it's their romance. And in the prequel, you meet them, and that's where they get together, and they have their romance, and the romance romance builds, and it's such an intense story between them being in the middle of a war zone and all of the psychological issues and all of the things that they're dealing with, including their relationship. It's just a very intense read. Like, my heart was racing the entire time I was reading it in the best way possible, both from all the butterflies and the excitement of the relationship, but also all the action that was happening in it. And then the first book in the series is after they are married and they're already together, and there is a whole other set of problems that happen. I highly recommend going in blind to this one because I think it will make the reading experience that much better. And then the second book I read shortly after reading the first book, and that one was really great too. I'm very excited for the last two books in this series. C.D. Reese is one of my all-time favorite authors. She has a beautiful writing style, and she somehow was able to incorporate really well-researched, at least in my opinion, information about not only the military and what it's like to live on base. Not that I have, experience in that, but it seemed like she had really well-researched, and also what it's like to be a psychiatrist and dealing with vets who have PTSD and all of that. Highly recommend this one. It was my favorite read of May, and I cannot wait to read the rest of this.
Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I have a channel called Steph's Romance Book Talk, and for my favorite book for the month of May has to be, it was such a hard choice. Let me just put that out there real quick. It was such a really hard choice for me to pick one book. And I am going to go with this one just because I think this is the most, I guess you could say, versatile that I think everyone would enjoy, especially if they like some of the things that I'm going to talk about. But it's called Another, and it's by Fiona Cole. It is part of the Voyeur series. I placed this book in contemporary, and I really enjoyed it because it deals with the trope of a secret pregnancy, and not like secret in, oops, there was an accident and I don't know how I ended up pregnant. It was more of a, we are missing sort of the connection between mom and dad, and when dad ends up finding out, it's like, oh, dang, that's okay. Let's do this. Let's get to it. And then you find out sort of the reasons why each party, is doing the pregnancy, is keeping the pregnancy, is, really invested in the pregnancy. And then you get to see them as they are parents together. And I just loved this story oh so much. It is my favorite in the series. I was a little leery about the main female character in this story. I think you should definitely read, if you haven't read the Voyeur series and you want to pick up this book, then do it. But if you have read it, I think the female character definitely gets sort of a revival in what she is, about, and her character, because she does have another book as well. That was sort of one of my, things that I kind of missed in this one. I felt she was carrying on a little too much about something that ended up happening, but at the same time, had I not read that, thinking about the character, had I not read it or read the other books in the series to know what she goes through first and just had this story, I would have loved it oh so much more. So I definitely think you guys should take a chance on Another by Fiona Cole.
It's Ashley from Asher Books, and my favorite romance for the month of May was A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Mila Vane. So this is a fantasy romance, and I would say it's a lot of fantasy and a lot of romance. So if you're good with both of those and you like I always kind of think, and I've been seeing a lot of people say the same thing, that it's a very high fantasy setting. There's a lot of fantasy elements, there's a lot of world building, there's a lot of kind of getting to know the land, and then there's also a really great romance between our two main characters, and I say it's actually pretty high on the steam factor. So if you like both of those things, this was the perfect book. I really enjoyed it. I love a good fantasy romance, and this one was just really unique for me, and kind of different from a lot of the ones I've read in the past. So in this book, our main character, Maddox, at the beginning of the book, his parents are killed, and so obviously he's very upset by this, and he kind of wants to seek vengeance on the people who did this. And his parents were kind of like very high up, kind of like ruled the land. As the story goes, he gets contacted by Yvonne, who is the daughter of the person who killed his parents and was a very, very bad person. And so he sees this as an opportunity to get that vengeance that he wants. What he doesn't realize at the beginning is that Yvonne hates her father just as much, if not more, than he does. So she really wants to work with him and help him take down her family because she's had a really rough upbringing, and she wants to help him get his revenge. Overall, it was just such a good book. It is pretty dense, so it did take me a little bit of time to get through it. But if you want something to just completely absorb you and take you to a fantasy setting, but also have just a really like hard at times, a little angsty, but also like really swoony romance, I would highly recommend this.
Hi guys, Sarah here. I am from the channel Steeped in Books, and I am here of course to share with you my favorite book that I read in the month of May. Hands down, this was recommended to me by someone, and I am so glad I took the recommendation. It was The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, the first book in the Girl Meets Duke series. This book was utterly delightful. I have read Tessa Dare before and absolutely loved her work, but this book hands down has now become my new favorite Tessa Dare. It might even take the ranking for my favorite historical romance. So essentially it's about a girl who is a seamstress, and she meets a duke, and that duke needs a wife. So he essentially is like, hey, you're going to be my wife, and who's going to say no to a duke? So the two of them get married, and he's essentially just looking at her for the sole fact that she can produce him an heir. And the story isn't maybe the best in plotline. I mean, it seems kind of like she's being bought for her ability to have a child, essentially. Like he's promising her the best of everything if she marries him and all these things. So the premise may seem a little dodgy, but our two main characters are utterly delightful. The back and forth banter between them, the jokes, the comedy, the banter, it is brilliantly done. There's a great running gag throughout the entire book of her giving him all these ridiculous pet names because she refuses to call him the Duke, which is what he's insisting on. It's just hysterical. I absolutely loved it, and I thought it was so sweet. Of course, it's a great romance in there as well. There's some great secondary characters. Highly recommend it. I know it's an older book by Tessa Dare. Not too old. It's a few years old, I believe. But I definitely recommend that you go ahead and pick it up because, like I said, hands down, my new favorite.
Hey everyone, my name is Tasha. I am Book Diva here on BookTube. And every month, some of my BookTube buddies get on and we do our monthly favorites for each month. And so this month we are here to do our May favorite. And so my May favorite that I picked this month is going to be Dirty Letters by V. Keeland and Penelope Ward. Excuse this, it does not give this cover justice or anything like that. But this book was absolutely amazing. This followed Griffin and Luca. Griffin is from England and Luca's from here in the US, and when they were in elementary school they had participated in a pen pal program where they wrote letters to each other, and they quickly became best friends by doing this, and they wrote like all throughout school and everything, and then they ended up losing contact with each other, and several years went by and they with no communication, and so a little bit of resentment kind of formed between them, and because each of them felt like the other one just kind of dropped them, and then they ended up getting reconnected in the future, and the truth came out about like what happened and why they kind of lost contact, and just them reconnecting and everything was such a journey, and I really enjoyed this. I actually both listened to this on audiobook as well as read this in ebook, and it is in Kindle Unlimited. This book was absolutely amazing. I loved every minute of it, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you have not read it, go check this out. All right, thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Jenn from the Book Refuge, and I'm sharing with you my favorite romance read from the month of May. And for me, this is always a hard choice, but I'm picking My American Duchess by Eloisa James. Once a month, I usually spend 2 or 3 days and just read a bunch of historical romance. And since I have been putting historical romances in my polls every month, it has really helped me to like stay on that high of reading historical romance, which is it's probably still my favorite category of romance. Even now I've read a lot of other options at this point. And Eloisa James is a staple for me. She's one of my top 3 favorite historical romance authors. I love how compelling her characters are for me. I love how you think you're getting one story with her and then something completely different happens. So this one, we're dealing with a girl named Mary who is the American Duchess, and back home in America, she had already jilted 2 fiancés, and she is staying in England with her aunt and uncle, and we meet her on the night that she is proposed to for a 3rd time, and she really thinks that this is the one. He is the second son of a dukedom, of a dukedom, and he seems perfect. He is kind and attentive, but they don't know each other very well. And the same night that she gets proposed to by him and accepts it, and she's sure this is going to be the one, she's going to commit to this one, she can't jilt another fiancé, it just can't happen, she meets someone out on a balcony, and they have this lovely conversation. He's a little bit prejudiced against Americans, she's a little bit tired of all the snooty people in England, but they really hit it off and have a great conversation. Then they go back out into the ballroom, and she realizes this man she just met is the older brother and the Duke of Trent to her fiancé. And the Duke of Trent decides that he wants Mary, and she wants him too, but she's in this pickle where she absolutely cannot jilt another fiancé because her family just can't survive it. And also, what is her word worth anymore if she just keeps jilting person after person? And even though there was good reasons for these, she doesn't know what to do. Well, the Duke of Trent, who him and his brother, they do not get along very well at all. He also doesn't want to be seen as stealing his brother's fiancée because, again, they have a contentious relationship, and that's not something that he actively wants to exist. So how are these 2 people going to find a way to be together, not offend his brother, not offend her family, not ruin her reputation for all of England? What are they going to do? This book was so beautiful. It's a chunker too. It's over 400 pages, which Eloisa James will do sometimes, but not a lot of historical romance authors will. This has a lot of elements that I love in one. It's not a hate to love because, like I said, they have that connection right away before they know who each other is. But it does still have this slow burn because she is very distinctly trying to stay away from him because she knows she has a connection, and she's planning to stick out this marriage, this engagement, no matter what. I don't want to spoil anything for you. This is a standalone by Eloisa James. It doesn't fit into any of the other series, so that was kind of fun. I really loved the Duke of Trent. I loved the ghosts that he has in his past. We explore why him and his brother aren't getting along. His brother has some things that make him not a great fiance at this time. And also Mary, and just how she realizes, do I know what love is? And there's that conflict in her about what is love and what is lust. And the Duke of Trent really trying to help her understand that it's okay that you've been infatuated with people at different times, and for you to fall in and out of that. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're a cheater or that you're any of those things, but just if you've never had a real love, then you wouldn't know that. This also has one of my favorite tropes in it that I don't want to tell, but if you have read it, feel free to reach out and ask me. So I've talked far too long, as I always do, but if you want to, come check me out at the Book Refuge, and I'd love to hear what books you read in May. Bye.
Did anyone else's TBR just grow by multiple books? Because mine did. They have read so many good ones this month, have so many great favorites and recommendations. I can't wait to check some of those out. Now, what I have decided for my favorite is Bromance Book Club by Lyssa K. Adams. This one, if you haven't heard, I feel like I'm like the last person on earth to read it, but if you haven't heard or haven't read it, this one is about a married couple who are having some marital problems, and he is a baseball player, like an MLB baseball player, and one of his teammates invites him to this romance book club, and it's where a bunch of guys read romance novels to try to figure out like how to woo their women. And so he joins this book club and tries to figure out how to save his marriage. And I just loved, one, I love sports romances, so it got that box for me. I loved reading about a married couple because I myself am married, and that's something you don't see a whole lot in romance, is like an established married couple. Their problems were very real, like they were just kind of stuck in this rut of not communicating well, and so their problems just kind of spiraled, and I think that is something that is very, very relatable. And I loved seeing him work on their relationship and seeing the dynamics of that relationship. I just loved everything about this. I laughed multiple times. I was emotional at points. It has one of those like rom-com, like grand sweeping endings where there's a huge gesture, and I just loved this book. So if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend you do. I can't wait to pick up the sequel. It was just such a good book. And because this is on my channel this month, I'm going to tell you about the two honorable mentions. They are How to Walk Away by Catherine Center and The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garbus Graves. Both of those were so good. How to Walk Away is about a girl who is in a plane crash, and she is left like paralyzed, and she has to make all these decisions about like reevaluating her life, and is it where she wants to be? Does she want to be with the guy that she is with? Does she want to do something different? And I thought the romance in this was just so compassionate and kind and sweet, and I loved it. And then this kind of similar, The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garbus Graves, is a second chance romance about a couple who was together 10 plus years ago. We don't know why they broke up, and then they run back into each other, and we know that the female is somewhere on the autism spectrum. And so it's just watching their relationship, both past and present, and the guy in it is just like, oh, he's just so wonderful, so sweet, treats her so kindly, and loves her, like, despite or because of, you know, I mean, her social interactions have nothing to do with why he loves her. And I just love their relationship. And so those two are other honorable mentions. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite romance for the month of May was, and make sure to check out everybody that I linked down below and the playlist of prior months, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.